So the traditional view of being an academic researcher is that you need to publish X number of papers over the given amount of time. And then when you do that, then you'll become the best researcher in your particular category. And, the X number of research papers sort of varies between different disciplines, but it's some amount of research papers that is given in the particular field. And then so we are driven to publish as much as we can, but I've come to terms with the fact that publishing is extremely difficult. And, I think that there is somewhat of a bias towards traditional research articles and what they look like. So, I've become more, as I've gotten older and more mature, I have, I've become more interested in weird people, in people that don't necessarily abide by that trend. And I think I've always been really interested in that and sort of attracted to that in the sense of both, there's people that do extraordinarily good, deep work that just takes a great deal of time and effort. And if you were to look at them, they would be an absolute scientific failure, right? That they would be, a professor that shouldn't be recognized, a scientist that didn't do a good job, and they wouldn't sort of stand up to the norms of what people would consider to be a good scientist or a good researcher. Because simply they just don't publish enough. Then there is another group of people that do weird stuff, that just are weird in terms of what they actually do. They, instead of publishing papers or research articles, they publish books. Instead of, doing the norm, consistent thing, maybe they go and they, they start a business, or the Sergey Brins, I guess, of the year of the world, right? That they're considered ultimately a failure. And if you were to talk within the scientific community, a lot of people, perhaps the majority, would consider them a failure, right? Like, it seems really strange. Sergey Brin, right, was a dropout, a PhD program. And by all means, the idea of creating Google wouldn't count. And even today, this guy would be considered a failure. Then there's the ones in between, right? Like all of these people that are doing good and they're trying, but they're not quite there. They're not quite getting it. They're not quite figuring it out. And I've been increasingly interested in this as a field, right? So just 1 second. I'm laughing because I'm picking up dog poo. I'm going on a walk with the dogs. This is where I try to do as many things as I possibly can at once. All you folks are listening to this and you're like, what is this? So, I think about, okay, right? If you were to take the average, or if you're to take the total of failed scientists and failed researchers, excluding the ones that end up becoming sort of superstars like the Sergey Brin out of it, or the ones that, are doing deep research, and you just focus on the complete failures, right? The ones that everybody rejects, nobody sort of likes, that they don't fit in, they drop out, all of those ones, and they end up, I don't know what they do, right? Like being disqualified, right? If you were to add that up and you were just to focus on the bottom quartile of scientists in terms of productivity, I have a hunch that amount of work, that effort, would amount to more research productivity than any of the other ones combined. That part of the reason what we're doing is we're focusing on stars. And because we focus on stars, on quote unquote, in terms of stars in a very narrowly defined way, right? That those stars are classified as being able to publish an extreme number of papers. How they get there is not questioned. What they look like, the papers are not questioned, but just sheer count of research articles. If we focus on that, and we just focus on those stars, then we exclude 95% of the research productivity. And if we were to add up, right, so stars are typically 5% of the population. I think it's even less than that, 1%. But if we were to add up that 95%, and you were to accumulate it, it would be an extraordinary amount of research effort that we consider wasted. And I've been increasingly interested in this as, why do we view it that way? That's A, why do we view it that way? And then B, how can we harness this in terms of this intellectual firepower of getting people to say, frick hell yeah, I'm awesome, right? Like, look at all this stuff that I've accumulated and I've actually done, and that this is actually a remarkable thing, and I'm part of that 95%. So I know it's an interesting thing, and I know that it's not talked about that much, right? And hopefully, I'm giving some awareness to this for you to think about it as like, wait a minute, this is an extraordinary gift to be part of this. And then B, the thing that I've been thinking about with the reciprocity platform is, how do I harness that? How do we recognize it? How do we quantify it? How do we get people from that bottom quartile just inched up a little bit so they get the recognition? All of those kind of things I think about is interesting, right? So we have this problem. It's similar to the file drawer problem. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it comes out of research methods, right? So every scholar, every researcher probably has more papers that are accumulated in their file drawer that just cannot get published for whatever reason. And so if we focus on the ones that are good, quote unquote good, we never see all of that knowledge generation that I think is important. And I think sometimes that there's really interesting ideas that do matter in those collections. I just have become increasingly aware of this. I think it's an increasingly more important problem that we pursue. And to focus on the mass, to focus on the bottom quartile or the average, rather than the upper quartile, I think has a much larger bang for the buck. And I hope to change that. I hope we give recognition to all of those that are not at the very top. Hopefully you'll help me out. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.